So I'm going to check in with everyone first and make sure everybody's doing okay. So Betsy, let me start with you. How have things been at Arts Access since the pandemic hit?
Well, from where we sit as a nonprofit that supports artists and with disabilities, it's a very strange time. It's a very unusual time, but we're okay. I have to say that I think we're going to fare better than most because we don't depend on productions and revenue right now. So I'm just thankful for that and have a little bit of survivor's guilt for those that do. But we're okay, basically, in this very strange and stressful time.
Now, Ronnie, how are you doing? I know that you've had to physically, you're newlywed, and you've had to physically distance from your wife. How's it going? How are you doing?
At the beginning of this isolation thing, I was kind of depressed, but as the time went on, I've kind of got into a new routine, kind of letting things flow.
Well, good. And how is your wife doing?
She's doing great. She has her support staff with her. I have mine with me. Her dad's there. She can't wait to come back home. And we just had lunch together yesterday from Bojangles. Respecting the 6 feet distance rule. We had lunch together, so it was good.
And you were able to have lunch together, or you wanted to have lunch together because it's your 9-month anniversary.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Thank God for Bojangles takeout.
Thank goodness, yes. And Doug, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I just saw a post yesterday about trying to work routine into your schedule, and that's something I have not been as good about. You know, get up, dress in your day-to-day clothes, to lounge around in PJs all day, that kind of thing, and then have a routine of things you're going to do at home, go out walking. And so I'm trying to incorporate that in. But other than that, I'm doing well. I've had good support from friends, from family. A couple people from my church came and took me shopping. So I'm doing well.
And that leads me to kind of a question. It sounds like you both have really good built-in support systems. Have any of the usual supports that you usually rely on been hampered by this pandemic, either transportation or people coming in to help you?
As was mentioned earlier, the bus lines are all running until 7, so there's nothing later than that. But on the upside, they are fare free right now. And if anybody's riding, you have to enter the back door, so you're not going right past the driver.
How about you, Ronnie? Have any of your services been impacted?
Go Raleigh Access, the paratransit system, as I said earlier, restricted leisurely trips and only taking people to medical appointments and other things like that. And other than that, no. I mean, my support worker still comes in. She'll come in she'll come in as often as I need her to. I mean, we've been together 4 years. She told me I'm not leaving. So
It's very fortunate you have that support person coming in for sure. And even I have to say, people, and Betsy, you and I've talked about this in panels, it's not always people with physical disabilities. My parents are elderly and they're relying on support systems and people coming in as well. And they don't actually have a physical disability, but they're now homebound because of this pandemic. So it's affecting a lot of populations in different ways.
I think one of the things that struck me is when people, you know, don't follow the stay-at-home order, or they say, oh, this is only going to affect elderly and those with health conditions, as if that's okay. Like that's a margin, you know, who cares? It's just those people. That's a pretty, you know, stigmatizing phrase when people talk like that. And, you know, not everybody with a disability has an underlying health condition, but many do. And so to feel that marginalization or lack of value bandied about in the news is just, I just think it's significant. People need to think about what it means when you say that. Oh, it just affects people with health conditions. That's pretty callous.
Agreed. I think it, I wonder, and I've asked this question in a few of the panels that I've hosted in the last few days, if this pandemic is a great equalizer or if it's affecting certain populations more profoundly. It sounds like it is affecting certain populations more profoundly.
I think if you look at it from an, you know, equity issue, it's just exposed the underlying problems even more. I mean, you look at social isolation and access to technology, those were there before, but this pandemic's just made it even more apparent that we're not all on the same playing field. If you look at education, you know, kids that can learn online, private schools can immediately go to online learning, but the school system, public school systems, you know, struggling with who has technology and who doesn't. That's the same thing with people with disabilities that are like, look at Ronnie, you were like the tech geek of my board. I mean, you're really good at this stuff and you have a nice setup, and you've talked a lot about being at home at your house, but you're online with your church and your friends. That's awesome. But look at people that weren't, you know, set up to do that or didn't have either the ability. And I do want to make a plug for it. As everyone thinks about going online and doing things virtually, please consider accessibility, especially for people that are blind or low vision, for people that are deaf. We have two folks on the call that can maybe speak to that. Doug, you're low vision, and can you talk a little bit about accessible media for you?
Yes. As a matter of fact, my brother, who's totally blind, and I just consulted or were approached by a law firm that's trying to not sue the pants off people. They're trying to get websites that aren't up to speed. And so we would go through and analyze together the accessibility of a web page, which you would think this many years into web technology that they would all be on the same page. They aren't. For instance, banking pages, the Duke Energy website. Sorry to throw a name brand out there, but they just aren't very accessible for somebody with low vision or blindness, and struggle forever to get through to even make a payment. So that's one of the biggest things, is making web pages accessible.
Can I tag on to Doug and say to arts organizations, while you may have some downtime if your programs have been postponed or canceled, this is a great time to work on your accessibility. And what Doug just said is very true for many arts organizations. Their ticket buying procedures, their ability to find information on their websites, spending some time on that issue is something you can do while you may not be putting on events or productions.
I feel like on that category, I have to tread lightly. And you're right, especially ticket payments, also scheduling apps, and they're using second, third party or whatever they're called. What's the one? Genius, something Genius.
Sign up,
Sign
Genius.
up.
Yeah. Terrible interface for people with low vision. And I've contacted the company a few times and said they need better tags on the buttons, because you'll click on something, it'll just say button, and so you don't know what you're clicking on. So they need to work on that. And it would be helpful if the people using those services would also put pressure on.
Lauren, are you seeing what Philip's typing? He is mentioning that the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities has a wonderful resource page around the COVID and people with disabilities. But I think we can share some of those links afterward if
I will definitely share some of those links, Philip. Thank you for sharing those, and we will share them on. I'll post a comment. I'll do a Facebook post with links following up after this. And Betsy, you also are putting out a newsletter, so this is a good time for people, if they have not subscribed to the Arts Access newsletter, to subscribe to the Arts Access newsletter, because you're going to put out some resources as well next week.
Yeah, so just as an organization, we're trying to think, what can we do? How can we stay relevant right now? And we have a lot of webinar resources, and especially try and get work hours in or have time on their hands. We're going to do a whole newsletter on things related to arts and accessibility next week that you can do online. And we will definitely have, just like what Doug's talking about, how do I review my website with a screen reader, et cetera. Or some of our, for teachers, we have some really great webinars through the Kennedy Center we're going to post. So look for that. And we always also put our newsletter on Facebook, our Facebook page. So if subscribe to our newsletter on our website, or else just like our Facebook page, and you'll see a link to that next week.
Wonderful. And Philip is saying he agrees with Doug. He posted on his Facebook page last Sunday resources for captioning your videos and audio describing your favorite images to make digital content more accessible to people with disabilities during this time of physical distancing. And to prepare for ADA's 30th anniversary in July. I didn't know it was the ADA's 30th anniversary.
I would love to promote something. And Ronnie, you probably know about this. Ronnie's our Arts Access board member. We are hosting, and I say that with full confidence, by July 27th, we're doing a Sunday afternoon event at the North Carolina Museum of History. And we're going to engage the public in multiple ways, so stay tuned for that. But that's a big deal, 30 years of civil rights legislation for people with disabilities.
In one of the interviews I did, because we're all having to reimagine the ways we communicate and we deliver products and services, one of Johanna Maynard Edwards from Women's Theater Festival said this could be a great thing for disability, for people living with disabilities, because now all of these tools which have made accessibility possible, people are going to have to use and make available to their audiences. So are you feeling like this is a good thing because people are going to have to reimagine the way they deliver services and start using these tools? Betsy?
Sure, I have a thought I was gonna, so yes, that is a fascinating thing to watch. For years, you know, a lot of people with disabilities were advocating to work from home, with transportation being one of the biggest barriers, or couldn't they do their job with accessible technology or do it in a non-traditional way? And a lot of employers would be like, no, we can't possibly have you work from home, or no, it's too expensive to do that. So there's been some, you know, frustration or even anger from some people we read on Twitter that, oh, wow, suddenly everybody's going to do this. You know, there's a will to do it. So that aside, it is very cool to think people are going to have new ways to work that could really benefit the disability community. And I like, you know, trying to stay positive during this time, or what can we do, I can get very excited about that we're coming up with better technology that will ultimately benefit people with accessibility or mobility or transportation challenges. So that's, yeah, I love to look at it that way, that we're going to be better at it when this is over.
And Betsy, as far as arts access goes, I know in some of the interviews I've done, grants funding has come into question. You're an organization that relies on grants. So how is the funding during this pandemic? And then what are you hearing from our arts organizations? Because I know there's a lot of them that are suffering.
So to address your first point, grants, thank goodness, you know, we're midway through the grant year. So those are in place. Thank goodness. And we heard from one of our major grantors, John Rex, which was a wonderful email to get, that they understood what was happening and to offer some flexibility on outcomes and timelines. That was wonderful to hear. Just, you know, you really don't want nonprofits and arts organizations to suffer more than we already are. But you know, what's scary is the future. You don't know what next year is going to be like or how long this goes on. And so we're okay right now. We did have a fundraising event tied to our series of fortunate events that's been postponed. I'm hoping, you know, our sponsors all stay in place. No, so it's very, we're okay, but everybody's looking towards the future. What does that mean? So stay tuned. And then what am I hearing? I hear some people are really in trouble, and our heart goes out to them. I mean, theaters that are losing camps and production revenue, that's devastating. So I think you all, a lot of the arts community and people have seen there's an artist relief fund that VAE and Pine County United Arts have set up. Lots of ways to give. We will have that in our newsletter next week. So I think people are struggling.
I definitely agree. How about the artists? I know you maintain a artists link, and Doug, maybe you can speak to this, but how are our artists living with disabilities being affected by this pandemic?
So far, I haven't interacted with too many artists with disabilities, but as far as just day to day, the show I was just in got in 2 performances before it was postponed.
What were you in, Doug?
Marat Sod.
Bear Theater.
At Bear Theater, BARE. And it was very frustrating for a lot of people because we were glad to get the first 2 performances in, and it was very well received. The hope is to have it later in April, but of course that's, you know, pending what happens with all this. The other thing that I've been doing is staying in touch with arts organizations that are still holding auditions and being active with that, so that I'm not just thinking, well, why should I even bother out for something if it's not going to be produced. So
And to that point, Doug, a lot of companies, a lot of theater companies are doing video auditions. Is there a way that theater companies who are doing these video auditions can make that process more accessible to people living with disabilities?
having the ability to contact someone by phone is helpful, or by text, so that if there are any questions as far as how to do it, and a couple of times I've seen that they're saying they're taking video submissions, you don't hear all the details right away, or they're not out there as easily to get a hold of. And it would be helpful to have a contact person so that you can talk to somebody. And it's a little frustrating sometimes trying to get put together and submitted.
So it sounds like if there are any theaters listening, that it would be good on their casting notices to put a contact person and contact phone number to.
And even if it's like an email or to be able to text them, that kind of thing.
Betsy, what else are you hearing from artists you work
Um,
with?
I think I've heard some really great creativity. I mean, I think you all have probably gotten a lot of the emails. A lot of the museums and galleries are thinking of ways. I know Brandon at VAE was helping with a toilet paper art contest where you created a work of art on a toilet paper and shared it. I talked to Gab Smith at CAM yesterday. They're looking at ways to maybe mail art supplies to teachers or schools. I mean, you know, kids at home that want to do art at home. I think we're going to be reaching out the whole mail. If somebody's not able to be creative at home, what do they need and what do, and you know, just getting them equipment or supplies. So I think I like the kind of necessity breeding creativity, finding new ways to stay motivated. It also led me to think about, because I have a school age kid, what are your kids doing at home and how important are the arts? Like a lot of kids that already had, you know, played an instrument or had art stuff, you see a lot of creativity going on and, you know, TikTok dances. But I'm just thinking that's all arts education, you know, and I don't know. I like, we're almost, the arts aren't the top of everybody's need around this, but it really is how a lot of people are spending their time. And that's cool. And I don't know, it just reminds me how valuable it is.
There's been a pretty good variety of people holding auditions, of course.
Mhm.
The other thing that's popular right now is, and they're still wrestling with how to make this work, but holding rehearsals on the internet for read-throughs or giving directing notes. Also, what was the other thing I was just thinking of when you were talking? I'll pass to someone else, but I'll try to think of it.
And you know, I think we're all looking for coping strategies through this. And one of those ways is leaning on the arts, Betsy. So I've been finding that really interesting. I hope our federal government and even local government sees how important the arts are during a time of crisis. Ronnie, I know you are a person of faith. How is you mentioned it a little bit, but how is your church supporting their congregants through this crisis and reimagining how they deliver services?
Well, they're doing online services through Facebook, through YouTube. They're doing small group discussions through different platforms like like Google Hangouts, which offers captioning, real-time captioning, Zoom, and they also, most importantly, they're still reaching out to the homeless community during the daytime. 10 people at a time, of course, feeding them and providing pastoral care virtually. They're still doing what they do, but from a remote locations. I mean, it's just remarkable how churches step up and just continue what they're doing, but being safe at the same time.
And I think people need faith right now. Betsy, one thing that strikes me though, as everybody is using this virtual technology and reimagining ways to deliver their programs and services, my hope is that it won't just stop after the pandemic's over, that people work these and weave these into their everyday practice. Is that your hope as well?
Right, that I use the word stay relevant, that we emerge stronger or more creative and have new tools. I mean, I'm like, I can't wait the idea that we would have a whole option for online training available to people as one of our offerings. That to me is really cool. Or if you're running a nonprofit, in some ways you have some time to do things that have always been on the back burner just your infrastructure. You know, you're always running from thing to thing. So, you know, I hope we come out stronger, wiser. You know, it doesn't feel like it right now when we're all sort of stressed out, but that kind of thinking is healthy. You know, that what can I do? What do I have control over? How can I support people? You know, that kind of thinking keeps you motivated versus wanting to get in bed with a pint of ice cream.
Well, and speaking to that point, Doug, you never fail to not make me laugh. You're a very funny guy. You have a great sense of humor.
Yes,
You are,
people laugh at me all the time.
well, and I'm not saying laugh at you. I'm saying laugh at
I'm
you.
laughing at you, Doug.
No,
Yeah, you are. You are, yes.
well, I am because you're really funny. And so I guess as you're navigating this situation or seeing this situation play out on television and in social media, where is the humor in this? Is there, I mean,
Well, of course, we heard about poor Jennifer with the people who aren't quite as adept at Zoom meeting, not turning the camera away from the bathroom. I just heard a news thing yesterday that royally ticked me off. You know, I can handle not having toilet paper, but when they start all the platforms on the web or on streaming start saying they're going to cut back to standard definition, okay, I'm going to get my pitchfork and torch out there. I'm beating their door down. I don't know if I can go back from HD.
Hey, Doug, you know who's really pissed off about this? Prince Charles.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's got the virus. They found out this morning Prince Charles has the virus.
Oh, no.
I'm making a joke.
Oh, okay.
Really?
I was a little slow on the uptake there. Forgive me.
All right.
so to all of you, and Betsy, I'll start with you. What can the community do to support people living with disabilities and support our artists living with disabilities through this pandemic? And since people have some time on their hands, are there volunteer opportunities that people can jump on and get involved with, organizations that they can get involved with that you're aware of?
Yeah, yes, I'm going to give a short answer. We're going to have some of that in our newsletter next week. Some of the things we know about are grant readers. I have a couple of people that are working to write grants for funding, and I think, you know, somebody that can write and edit, that type thing, things we can do. I'm going to, here's my plug, like we're on the Tonight Show. We had this scheduled for spring, and we are still soliciting sponsorships. They start at $50. I am going to announce today that any sponsorships that are coming in, we're also going to dedicate to helping artists that need supplies delivered. We can go ahead and start taking some of that revenue and directing it towards our Artist Link project. So if you're an artist trying to work from home and you need something, you know, it might even be a Zoom subscription or something for, like, I thought what Doug just said was interesting about, you know, rehearsals, that type thing, reach out to us. And if we are getting donations via the series of Fortune Events sponsorships, you get listed as a sponsor and you can help artists right now. And stay tuned. We're going to reconfigure this summer is our plan. So there's a pitch.
By the way, Betsy, you are on your game. I noticed the little sign behind you. always getting it out there.
Well,
I thought about that.
we have to get it out there. Doug, what can people do to support our friends living with disabilities during this time, especially for all physical distancing? You're a pretty social guy. You and Ronnie are really active in the community. You're active in the theater community. So what can we do to support people living with disabilities living alone?
As a few friends have already, somebody from the theater community, a couple have contacted me through Facebook PMing me to say, hey, if you need anything. A couple of my friends and family have already contacted me. If you need anything, except for toilet paper, we're keeping all the toilet paper, letting us have that. But reach out to somebody that you know isn't able to get around as easily, especially if the ride services are restricted further. It would be nice to be able to get someone to a doctor's visit, or just to pick up groceries, or go do the grocery run for them and drop it off at their house.
And it's not a one and done. People need consistent check-ins. Don't just check in, check it off your box, and then you're done with that person and moving on. We have to keep checking in on each other.
Yes, and make a list of names and put my name at the top. Constantly come back to me.
Ronnie, what can folks do to support you and others living with disabilities?
What can I say that Mr. Doug had not already said? Checking on each other, send me jokes over email or Facebook.
Yes.
Reach out to your social networks or your activity networks, and just reach out to your supportive staff if you feel led to. And I mean, I don't want to use my faith community too much, but reach out to your faith community, tell them what you need, because even though people want to check in on you, they're not mind readers. They don't know what you need until you tell them. So my fear is, and I'm sorry for saying this, Durham has already issued a shelter-in-place order as of today, I think. My fear is what happens to us if we end up on that list. Because I think the order says we're not allowed to go to friends or families, only to a grocery store, the doctor's appointments. So how do we navigate through that?
And I know one question that's come up to that point, Ronnie, with my parents, my parents are older, and they also have a CNA coming in and helping them during the day. And their concern is, if there's a shelter-in-place order, will that affect people coming into the home and being able to offer support? So it's something to think about as well. Philip typed in, and I'm going to read this. Last week, WRAL advertised that there's a toll-free Hope line that's been established for older adults experiencing isolation from social distancing. There's a phone number, 1-866-578-4673, or 1-866-578-HOPE, HOPE. And then Philip is working on a North Carolina ADA, working with Karen Hamilton, North Carolina ADA Network Coordinator, to gather 30 disability ADA stories for the ADA's 30th anniversary. And the first 30 people who submit a story who are not members of the NCCDD or state employees can be eligible to receive a $30 gift card. And Philip, you're giving us so many great resources, so I'm going to copy and paste the chat when we're done, and be sure to include those resources for folks as well. Thank you for contributing that. Betsy, other resources that you know of?
Just, I think we'll post some after this. Philip's been doing a great job leadership on getting these out every day via their networks. And like I say, just look for our newsletter next week.
And subscribe to Arts Access. Follow them on social media. Go on to the artsaccessinc.org website. I will put the links on our Facebook page as well. And and follow you guys on social media so we can keep up with you. I'm going to open it to questions. So if there's people watching us on Facebook Live, you can comment on the live stream, and I'll be checking my phone. If anybody in the chat here has questions, type them into the chat box. And I think the chat box is on the lower part of your screen, and I can read them and we can reflect. But I'm really grateful everybody's joined me this morning and we're able to have this conversation, because as I've started doing these interviews, there's so many layers to this story, this pandemic, that I think people just aren't seeing. And so we're trying to spotlight those layers so people take time out to think about others in our community.
Thank you, Lauren. You're doing a great job of bringing content in new ways with your RDU on stage. So thank you for both this chat and all the other interesting ones you've had the last couple of weeks. And I hope there's more.
Thank you. And I know, Ronnie, you're a person of faith. I'm really excited about this, so I'm going to announce it here. But next Monday night at 7 p.m., and I'll be putting out the Facebook event, but Kevin Turf, who is the real life Kevin T from Come From Away, also known as, and this is what he calls himself, so I'm not marginalizing him at all, the gay lumberjack. So if you saw Come From Away, his character is referred to as the gay lumberjack. He's written a book called Channel of Peace, which talks about compassion and his time in Gander after 9/11. And I've been thinking about, he and I had a conversation about compassion before the national tour of Come From Away came through town. And I've been thinking about that a lot as I've been navigating this pandemic. So I've asked him to join me on Instagram Live next Monday night so we can have a chat. So that will be out there as well. And there's other chats going on, so people can follow our Facebook page and see the event listing.
The thing you were talking about there, how to help others, compassion. It's at first when these happen, you tend to focus on yourself and your immediate family. But I hope, and I'm saying this to myself as well, that I will start to think of others as well, think of others in the community. Even my neighbors, I dropped off, I know what brand of Chardonnay she likes. So I dropped off a couple bottles of her favorite Chardonnay. Just helping your friends, your family, and focusing on them through this takes some of the, I guess, angst out of your life for just sitting huddled under a sheet in the corner of your living room eating ice cream. It really helps to focus on others during this time.
I totally agreed. Totally agreed. And I haven't received any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting, but I will make all of these, and before I actually end the meeting, I'm going to copy and paste all of the resources Philip has given us, because I'm a little concerned that when we log off, I'm going to lose the chat and the resources that he's given me. So I'm going to copy and paste those onto our Facebook page. And just take care, everybody, and stay healthy and check in on each other.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for having this.